Hello everyone and welcome to another one of my videos. Today I will be talking about the Nine of Wands. You can see here immediately that there's something different again about our wands. So we are used to seeing these wands, the Golden Dawn wands, but in the 8, these wands turned into electrical rays, and here in the 9, they turn into arrows. And I think we're going to begin the explanation of what this card is all about with a quote from the Book of Thoth. And I will give you the quote and then we will unpack it and we'll try to understand everything that it tells us, because there is a lot of information in this quote. The wands have now become arrows. There are 8 of them in the background. So these are the 8 in the background. And in front of them, one master arrow. So this is the master arrow in the card. This has the moon for its point and the sun for the driving force above it. For the path of Sagittarius on the tree of life joins the sun and moon. The flames in the card are tenfold, so these are the flames here, implying that the energy is directed downwards. And now I will explain what each part of this quote means. So we know that we are dealing with arrows now, and why arrows, I will explain this a bit later. But first I wanted you to notice something in this card. If you see where the arrows cross, you can see that they are actually physical arrows. They're physically there, because when they cross, one of them is higher up and others are below it. So if you compare this, for example, to what we had in the Six of Wands, you can see that the way they cross, they occupy the same space. None of them are higher or lower. They're just in the spirit world, so there is no physical aspect here. But because we are in the 9 now, we are getting closer and closer to Malkuth, so the energy becomes denser, you might say, and things become more physically manifested. So now to understand the second part of the quote, which says, this has the moon for its point. It's about the master arrow, this arrow. This has the moon for its point and the sun for the driving force above it. So we can see that if you can imagine, this is an arrow that's pointing downwards. So this would be where the sharp point of the arrow would be normally, but we have the moon here, and this is, you might say, where the arrow begins, where the place where you would hold it, and we have the sun here. So the sun is the driving force here, and it gives the energy to the moon. And the quote also says, for the path of Sagittarius on the tree of life joins the sun and the moon. And to understand this, we need to see our tree of life. So this is our tree of life, and we are now here, we are in Yesod, and Tiferet, that's connected to the sun, is here, and this is our moon. So this path between the sun and the moon on the tree of life, this is the path that is assigned to the art card, because every single one of these paths is assigned to one of the cards of the major arcana. And this path, joining sun and moon, is our art card. And art, of course, is assigned to Sagittarius. So this is what he means when he says that this is the path of Sagittarius. So it's the path of the art card that joins the sun and the moon. And the last part of the quote is, the flames in the card are tenfold, implying that the energy is directed downwards. So these are our flames. We have 10 flames. 10, of course, is connected with the last Sephiroth of Malkuth. So again, we look at our tree of life, and we can see that this is our path between the sun and the moon. And then from the moon, the energy goes downwards to Malkuth. And this is what is very emphasized in this card, that we are in Yesod, but all of the attention, all of the energy from Yesod is directed downwards to Malkuth to finally manifest everything in our physical world. So let's have another look at our arrows now. They are red, they have this lovely deep red color. This color is associated with the fiery energy of Sagittarius, because this card is Moon in Sagittarius. So there's like a double influence of lunar energy in this card, because we're in the ninth Sephiroth of Yesod, connected with the Moon, and also this card is Moon in Sagittarius. So we have a lot of moons here in this card. We have moons at the ends of the arrows in the background, and also the tip of the arrow is also a little moon. So we have 8 moons here, and this is 9th. 9 moons, of course, 9 is again a reflection of our 9th Sephiroth of Yesod. And I also wanted to tell you that we are now at the end of the astral triangle. So this is the astral triangle here, and Yesod ends it. If we count all of those moons that we have here, we get 72 of them. So 72 is a very interesting number, and this is gonna be maybe a small digression, but I think it's very interesting. So bear with me for a moment. 72 is a very important number in many different cultures. That's why it's so interesting. For example, it's associated with the Shem HaMephorash in Kabbalah. So this is the 72 names of God. It's also the number of languages at the Tower of Babel. Confucius had 72 disciples. There are 72 books in the Bible, and there are 72 degrees of Jacob's ladder. And as you know from my video about the Tree of Life, the Tree of Life really is Jacob's ladder. So I think it's very interesting, but the most interesting thing I found about the number 72 is from the Egyptian mythology. And it's connected with the god Thoth, which is the patron of this deck, and also with the moon. So I think it's very important to mention it here, even though it might take us a bit away from the meaning of this card. But I think it's a very interesting, like a layer of meaning here. So the legend is that Thoth wins the 72nd part of each day of the year from the moon. So Thoth and the moon play checkers, and he wins these small parts of each day because, I don't know if you remember, in my video about the Decan wheel, I explained that the Decan wheel is basically the Egyptian calendar. So they had 360 days in their calendar, and of course we have 365. So they had to explain somehow how these 5 days happen to exist. And this legend is the explanation. So Thoth and the moon play checkers. He wins these little parts of each of the 360 days, so 72nd part of each of those days. And this is his favor to the goddess Nuit, which is the goddess of the sky, the cosmos, the whole universe, and astronomy. So, as a favor to her, he wins those bits of days, and he creates the extra 5 days out of those little parts. And these extra 5 days are when the gods and goddesses are born. So I think this is very interesting. But yes, now we're going to go back to our card. So let's have a look at the sun next. And if you have a closer look, you will notice that we have 18 rays here, but 9 straight rays and 9 curved rays. So again, even in the way the sun is depicted in this card, we have this lunar energy because we have the nines again, 9 associated with Yesod. So 18 is another very interesting number because it is associated with the word high, which means living or alive. And this is another very important both number and word. And if you remember from my video about the Ace of Wands, we had 18 lightning bolts in the background here, which were associated with the power of creation. So have a look at that video for the explanation of high and to see what it looks like, because I have this symbol there in that video. But for this card, we only need to know that the 18 rays of the sun is the sun's potential to create. And this creative energy of the sun is being directed towards the moon, because you can see there's this yellow line in the middle of the red arrow. So this is the path of the Sagittarius, as we saw on the Tree of Life. And the creative energy is being given to the moon so that then in turn it can go towards the earth and Malkuth. We don't have a glyph for the moon in this card, which is very unusual. We just have like a graphic representation of the moon here, like a little crescent moon, and we have the glyph of the Sagittarius at the bottom, which again draws our attention to the fact that all of the energy is directed downwards here in this card. So we're gonna see now where we are on our Decan wheel. So we are here in Sagittarius, and we are in the second Decan, which is connected with the Nine of Wands, so it's Moon in Sagittarius. The energies of Moon and Sagittarius are very complementary to each other. Moon loves changing, but the change of the moon is very harmonious. It can be planned, and it's not chaotic at all. And this is what Sagittarius needs, because Sagittarius loves change. Sagittarius is always looking for a new adventure, for something fresh. So it gets this change with the energy of the moon, but the moon, you can say, keeps it in check. So things don't get out of hand, they don't get out of control. There is a bit of change, but there is also harmony within this change. Moon is also connected with our subconscious and our deepest desires, our very private wants and what we think we would like for ourselves, but maybe we're not sharing this with anyone else. And Sagittarius, which is very outgoing, is inviting us to take some of those ideas, to take some of our dreams and start working on them, start turning them into reality. So this harmony between the two energies is shown in the card, because you can see in the card there is harmony here, there is balance, there is nothing out of place. Everything is where it should be. So there is no chaos here at all. The two major Arcana cards that are connected with the Nine of Wands are, of course, the art that we have seen before. This is Sagittarius, and it's all about bringing balance and joining the opposites harmoniously. The second card here is the Priestess, and she is connected with the moon. And you might be wondering why is the priestess associated with the moon and not, just the moon card. But the moon card is actually associated with Pisces. And this is because the moon just describes the power of the moon to give illusions and the subconscious depth of the moon. But the priestess describes the moon's fluctuations and the harmony that the moon's constant change brings to our life. So there is another quote that I wanted to share with you that explains a bit about this. It says, this card is also governed by the moon in Sagittarius, so there's a double influence of the moon on the tree of life. Hence the aphorism, change is stability. And this is what we have in the priestess card. So because she is so changeable, but changeable in a predictable way, because we know what phases the moon has and we know what way it changes signs throughout the month. So we know that it's changeable, but there is a stability and there is like a safety in knowing about these changes. So we can plan according to the moon. For example, we can plan our gardening according to the moon. We know what's going to happen and when exactly. So this is what it means when Crowley mentions that change is stability. And we have arrows here in this card, and we have also bow and arrow in the priestess lap here. So she is also associated with Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and her attribute is the bow and arrow. So this is another link for these arrows. So these are not only the arrows of Sagittarius, as we can see in the art card, there's an arrow here as well, creating this beautiful rainbow. So these are both the arrows of Sagittarius and the arrows of the moon goddess Artemis. So the last part of the card that I want to mention is the background. The background is grey here on top, but at the bottom it turns into black. And this is another clue that the energy goes downwards in this card, because the joint energies of the sun and the moon, their only purpose is to create matter in Malkuth, down below. And if we have a look at the Tree of Life again, so we know that this is the path of Sagittarius, this is the path of the art card between Tiferet and Yesod, but the energy travels downwards from Yesod to Malkuth, and this path is connected with the card Universe. And Universe is associated with planet Saturn, so the color black is the color of Saturn, and this is where our energy creates the final manifestation. And I have the last quote from the Book of Thoth for today. The quote is, "This card is referred to Yesod, the foundation. This brings the energy back into balance. The 9 represents always the fullest development of the force in its relation with the forces above it. The 9 may be considered as the best that can be obtained from the type involved, regarded from a practical and material standpoint." And I will explain the first part of the quote later, but first I want to tell you about the second part of this quote. So he means that the energy of every 9 in every suit of this deck is the perfect and most full representation of a certain element. So in the 9 of Wands we have the most perfect manifestation of the energy of fire, And because we are in the world of spirit, then this card describes our inner strength. So it's like our inner fire. And always the 9 is the most perfect. So when we get to the 10, the energy starts to decay, you can say. The energy of the 10s is more the end of usefulness of something. So the 10 is nearing the end of things and it wants to become another element. It's like it yearns for this change already. So the 9 is the pinnacle, you can say, of this energy, and then the 10 is where like we are after the culmination point. And the first part of the quote brings us back to the Tree of Life again. So here's our Tree of Life, and when he says the card is referred to Yesod, the foundation. So Yesod, I remember I mentioned this before in the video about the Tree of Life, that Yesod is the engine room of creation. So this is where all of the energy gathers before it goes down to Malkuth and creates the final manifestation in matter. And it brings the energy back into balance. So this just means that we are again in the middle pillar here. So this is where the balance of the Tree of Life is. We were in the 7, then in 8, and now we're back in balance again in the middle. The quote also says that the 9 always represents the fullest development of the force in its relation with the forces above it. So if we had the astral triangle here and we have completed it, so the completion of the astral triangle is its balance. So this is the balance of this force, and it's related to the forces above it. So it's related to all of the other Sephira in the middle pillar of the Tree of Life. So this is a truly amazing card. It is very powerful, and I'll explain now a bit about how it can be interpreted in readings. So as I mentioned before, this card is associated with our inner strength, and in this card, we have the energy of the sun and the moon in perfect balance. So, if you think about it, the sun represents your ego, your intellectual part, and just the way you act in the world. So, your personality, but your personality amongst other people. And the moon is kind of the opposite of that, because the moon is the subconscious. The moon is our habits, our most private thoughts. So the moon is our personality, but our personality when we are just with ourselves, when we are just alone, and maybe the parts of ourselves that we don't show to anyone. So when you have the energy of the sun and the moon in perfect balance, and when you feel this within you, then there is nothing that can stand in your way. Like you can literally like move mountains. There's nothing too difficult for you to achieve. And this is the type of strength that is presented in this card. So it's like a tremendous strength within you. And when you get this card in a reading, this can just mean that you need to remember about this strength inside you. Because a lot of people are very strong, but they don't really see themselves as strong, and they don't realize how much strength they have within them. So this can be just a reminder of your own strength, and that you have this strength to draw upon if you are in trouble and if you need it. This card can also show up in health-related readings. This can mean that someone has a really strong body, a really strong organism that can overcome any disease. And if you are reading for someone who already has some health issues, then this card means that definitely they will be healthy again. They can overcome this disease. with this card, when you see it, it might mean that they are in the middle of fighting, like fighting off the disease, but it's gonna be successful. Like they will get their health back. The Nine of Wands also means that you should not give up. This card can come up sometimes in a reading when someone is fighting for something for a very long time and they have used up so much of their energy and they're thinking of just calling it quits. But if you see this card, it means no, you're gonna win this. Just like stick with it. It's going to happen, but you cannot give up now. Like this is like the last push that's gonna make you achieve something. In general, every time you see this card, it's like a little reminder for you that you have this like amazing inner strength inside you, and no one can do anything to change this. So, no matter how difficult your situation is, no matter what is happening around you, when you get this card in a reading, it just means you got this. Like, no one can touch you. The strength that's inside you is just so incredible that you can overcome anything, and it's like the strength that can only be used for good. This is not, a power to hurt people. Definitely not. This card is like hugely positive. So this is it for today. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you liked the video. If you enjoyed it, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to my channel for more videos. I'll see you really soon in the next video about the Ten of Wands. Thank you so much for today. Bye!